In this video, I'm going to go over two replays. The first is a loss that re-inspired me to run Heavy Hunter again. My opponent runs the King Crab and the Heavy Hunter, which ends up being just a really cool combo. It's actually what I used for the longest time in the beta, until some point where I just started experimenting with different Tier 2 Foundry units. Um, and then this game just re-inspired me to return to it. So um, I went Starforge in this game. I just was given Stingers a shot against it just to see how that would go, which didn't pan out very well. Um, my opponent made mostly King Crabs and then just followed up with just a handful of Heavy Hunters to counter any potential air that I would make. Um, Typically, when I was going Starforge, I preferred using the Stingers for the most part. Air was sometimes almost an afterthought for me, but in case that was a consideration of mine, he would have had the answer for it. Even if I had switched to Dragonflies earlier, I don't think it would have made much of a difference because he was kind of prepared for both options basically. Um, Now the Stinger could potentially micro against King Crabs and beat them. I've heard some pros comment that the Stinger might actually counter the Crab, um, but in my experience, the micro is pretty hard to beat them with. In a previous video, I did cover the Stinger versus Shocker matchup, which does require some micro to get your Stingers in a really good position to try to take down the Shockers. Um, but in that case, that was pretty much just like a one and done kind of thing. You just come in at a good angle, um, target fire the Shockers, and then it's it's pretty much over because they kill them so incredibly fast. But when dealing with King Crabs, um, the Stinger is so much faster. You could potentially kite it and stay out of range, but yeah, it's a matter of target firing them and kiting, and given how much health they have, you have to do that repeatedly for a longer period of time. So it's just way more taxing of a micro for the Stinger player to pull that off appropriately. Um, so here's kind of the first engagement, which maybe could have gone better. Um, but I end up losing a lot of my Scorpions here and having to back up with my Stingers, and I'm doing a little bit of kiting, and it's probably garbage compared to pros and stuff, but I do what I can. Um, yeah, my opponent just keeps marching onto my base, and I've only got so much room to play with, right? The map's kind of small. There's not all that much space, and if I had all the space in the world to kite, that'd be great. But eventually, he's just on top of my base, and he's on top of my workers, and then he's just doing this incredible amount of worker damage, and there's just not a whole lot I can do about it. It looks like I did actually make a handful of dragonflies, and of course they just get toasted by the heavy hunters. So definitely a really solid combo, and it really permits you to be aggressive. The thing that's so cool about running King Crab and Heavy Hunter is that you can just kind of tech into it real fast and not even think that hard about whether your opponent is going to go Foundry or Starforge, because you're kind of covering all your bases that way. If your opponent goes Foundry, you don't need the Heavy Hunter. If they go Starforge, you've got the Heavy Hunter there to cover it, right? So yeah, so huge kudos to my opponent in game one. I really like that style. It was the style I was doing previously, so I returned to it and I really enjoyed it. So game two is a separate game, different opponent, where things just panned out really well with having done this switch. So my opponent here is actually doing a one base rush. They're teching immediately into the Stinger, and I expanded right off the bat. So in response here, I'm going to need to tech as soon as possible, tech into Foundry, so make sure I save 400, so they can hit that as soon as possible. And then defending this is kind of similar to a video I previously did on defending against one base Swift Shockers. So kind of similar here, just exchange the Swift Shocker for the Stinger. You should expect to take some worker damage. He's got the fast unit. They're going to be knocking on your door before your tech is online. So you should expect to take some worker damage. The goal is to hopefully at least prevent him from destroying the base itself at the natural, and hopefully just kind of delaying, just long enough to get your tech online, basically. So he's also got wasps, and the King Crab is also pretty good for taking care of those in the big picture of things. And Yeah, and then once I'm ready to move out, of course, I could, I can generally leave like a single king grab at the natural and use that to kind of move out. And that's some stuff I covered in the how to deal with wasps video. If you want to check that out too. So, but yeah, here he is. He's on top of my base, doing a lot of damage, taking out my scorpions with his wasp and stinger combo, and my tech comes on line just in time. I pretty much lost every single scorpion at this point. But yeah, 5-6 crabs here. It's plenty to clean all this up. They're so incredibly strong, tons of health. Wasps don't stand a chance, and stingers only stand a chance if the opponent is really on top of them and really microing them, which it just takes a lot of effort. So yeah, so right after that, I make a heavy hunter for each control group. I basically got a control group at each of my bases. And at this point, my opponent hasn't taken a second base, so there's no real reason for me to march across the map to attack them. I just really have to hold off any further pushes, wait for my workers to come back online, and yeah, my opponent kind of realizes that he's going to be falling behind there and concedes. So yeah, anyway, that's the heavy hunter, and I hope you enjoyed, and have a good one. Bye.